so for those of you who don't know me, I am Wendy Klein. I'm a senior community manager and general manager with CAP Management. I'm a manager on site at a property in the Golden Triangle, and then outside of that, I do have another small portfolio of properties that I manage. I've been with CAP for about 5 years. In the ever-changing cycle of properties, I've managed everything from small single-family home communities, high-rises, 270 private homes, so kind of run the gamut with that. In my 5 years, I get a lot of questions as to who's Gwen, which she's already been introduced, but I brought her along to tag team. Gwen is our Heartbeat service director, whatever,
well,
tell them.
I'm basically homeowner customer service, your customer service for pretty much everything. We have a pretty big wheelhouse in the Heartbeat division. There's myself and Leah. Our priority is the service at CAP email, which we manage. We each have our own individual emails, and then the maintenance at CAP management also. The majority of your homeowners are calling Heartbeat to get access into sync web access. They have questions about how to put in work orders. We answer those. Keys and fobs and anything that we don't manage or help facilitate that gets transferred to the community manager. And again, we have a pretty big wheelhouse, so we always recommend that homeowners, if they have a question, reach out to us first, because we can help you. We're a little bit easier to get in touch with than your community manager. I have been with CAP for about 3 years, but I've been in this industry since the 80s. And I've had a lot of different experience, but the majority of what I do at CAP is for work orders, which I love, by the way. It's very challenging. Sometimes it feels like babysitting, but hopefully you guys will get some information out of this presentation that'll help us moving forward, maybe manage your work orders a little bit better, so you understand the process from our end.
Question for you. Heartbeat is wholly owned part of CAP?
Heartbeat is just a division. It's just a department of CAP, and there's just 2 employees, yeah. And we're your, like I said, basically your, just think of us as customer service. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start with the basics. What is a work order or a maintenance request? Seems pretty obvious, but you would not believe some of the phone calls we get, so we want to make sure that we clarify the reasons that submitting a work order or maintenance request, or what justifies one. First, it's a formal request from a homeowner to the HOA to report or request, and the request is going to be a big term that we're going to be talking about today, in a common area of the community. So anything that is wrong that the HOA is responsible for is constituting a work order. It's not your garbage disposal, it's not the broken handle on your toilet, those kinds of things. It's anything that's in the community that's common that the HOA is responsible for. Again, a request that needs to be addressed by the HOA. Communicating a need for repair or maintenance. Obviously, your community managers are in the properties or in the communities on a weekly, monthly basis, but on those times that they're not there, unless you have on-site staff, things get missed, things happen when we're not on site, so this is a good way to let us know that there's something that needs attention. And the benefits of tracking this, and this is a hard one, I think, to discern. I know it's just as easy to be like, hey, Wendy, we've got a leak in the ceiling. But for us, these formal requests are something that's kept in the system that we can track, that we can log, and that we can go back and reference in the future. It helps us with tracking. So if there is a leak in a pipe in the ceiling, we can go back and see if that's leaked before, when the last time it might have been replaced or repaired. And then we can manage it that way. If it's something that we know, the parking garage at the end of every season is gross because of all of the mag chloride and the sand and the salt that are on the roads, then we can go through and manage regular maintenance updates. Same thing with maintenance. If we're finding a consistent issue in one place, we can go ahead and schedule that maintenance. Maybe it needs a preventative maintenance contract if it's continuing all of the time, and we need to make sure that it's on schedule. So when you put in that work order, it's not just to let us know. There is a little bit of method after the fact that we go through and follow in the process. So we highly encourage work orders. And also to Erin's point, submitting the work order, whether it's to us or to her, it's easier to do it through Sync Web Access than calling us, because we might be out in a community, we might be driving to a community. This is going to be your first stop. They're the first ones that are going to see it for the most part. And whether we're out doing something, then at least it's being tended by somebody else. And then they call us.
Yeah. And then as a reminder also, unless you have management on site 24/7, or at least throughout part of the week, you're the eyes and ears for your community. And sometimes I understand that you might want to put in a work order for something that's a common area, but you know, you're like, well, somebody's maybe checking this out, or maybe somebody's already aware of it. If I get a work order and it's a duplicate, I will close it out, but I send you an email first letting you know. But honestly, we depend so much on the homeowners and the board to let us know what's happening at your community. And I also would like to stress on that, as far as completion, when I do go close out a work order, I try to get confirmation from the homeowner or the vendor or a board member if they're involved. But at any time, if it isn't complete, let us know, because sometimes we get wrong information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I liked this picture when I was Googling work orders that popped up. We always know when, as community managers, when Gwen's working, because all of a sudden your email blows up and I'm like, work order for you and a work order for you. So it was kind of fitting. Anyway, when to submit a work order maintenance request, we've touched on a little bit, but whenever a maintenance task needs to be completed, and the key word in here is maintenance. It's not to submit to let us know your neighbor's dog is barking. It's not that the neighbor had a loud party last night and you don't know what to do. This is strictly request for maintenance around the common areas, limited common elements of the community. It's preventative. So if we have your monthly elevator maintenance scheduled and something goes wrong with the elevator, we can certainly do that outside of the monthly maintenance. So you'll want to make sure that that's part of it. Corrective, if something's broken, fob reader's not working on your doors, which seems to be a common problem these days for me. I don't know why. Maybe your washing machine is out of service in your unit and you maintain the laundry room. We want to correct those as soon as possible. And then, of course, there's emergency. And what everyone deems an emergency varies greatly. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Of course, and I want to make sure that the first instinct, if there is an emergency, don't sit down and fill out a work order. If you need to evacuate your building or it's that kind of emergency, get out, make sure you're safe, and then call us. But this is more like if there's a pipe leak or something like that that will damage the building or consistently be an issue, we'll need to get that taken care of pretty quickly.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So on those emergencies, if it's not everyone has to evacuate when it's a leak or the one and only elevator is down, you want us to create a work order rather than calling, or should we do both?
I would do both. The issue with that is if I'm your property manager, you call me and you're like, oh God, Wendy, our elevator went down again. Great. The first thing I'm going to do is not call Gwen and Heartbeat. I'm going to call Schindler or whoever your elevator person is. Putting in the work order secondary then allows Gwen and myself to tag team on that. She can let me know, be like, oh, the elevator's down, do you know? And I can put notes on there and say, yep, already reached out to Schindler, it's taken care of. And then we can both manage it from there. I might be managing the work order, but she's then going to email all of your homeowners and let them know the elevator's down, we're aware, you don't have to keep calling us, it's under control.
Yeah. And if I could elaborate also, the work order is a paper trail. It is how we communicate with the community and the homeowner. I think if you look at it and consider that it's your very first notice that this is happening. It's possible, but whatever this work order is might need to be an insurance claim. The insurance people want to know the very first date you noticed this issue. But the paper trail, in addition to recording the incident, your vendors are required to put a work order number on the invoice or a bid. And this is also gonna help you when you go to approve invoices. You can have a cross-reference. But as far as in emergencies, I think it's important, obviously, to deal with whatever the issue is. I know when I have the pager, I always ask the homeowner, when you have time, open up that work order so we have a paper trail. Because you guys need to be aware that there's an emergency happening at your community. Maybe you have something to add to that emergency. Maybe you have information that the homeowner doesn't have. So that work order in the form of a paper trail, any communication, and Aaron did touch on this, any communication that comes through email, whether it's a phone call, or if it's from the community manager, I take that information and I log it on that work order. And I'm not kidding when we say sometimes there's 30 or 40 notes on a work order. And that helps not just me or your community manager, but you as board members can literally go under those work orders at any time and look at all those notes and see what the process is, who's talking about what, how this is getting done, any complications that come up. So the work order always should be open regardless of the situation. And I did hear a question earlier that someone asked, should it be open even if it's a homeowner responsibility? And we address those. I usually email the homeowner with the governing document information or with the maintenance and insurance chart information and say, this would be your responsibility. But you know what? You as board members can look at those work orders and go, look, we have 10 homeowners right now and all their faucets are breaking. So it kind of keeps you in the loop about what's happening in your community, even things that are not considered a common element or a limited common element. Sorry, I went on and on.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
So our biggest challenge when we get the work orders or requests from homeowners is to determine whether it's HOA responsibility or whether it's the homeowner's responsibility. We get all kinds of requests. Some of them are automatic, some we have to do a little research. So we encourage all homeowners, including board members, before you submit that request, to really do your due diligence and make sure that it is something the HOA is responsible for. So a few ways you can do that is use your maintenance and insurance charts. There's an example here in the circle of what that looks like. This is a document that your attorneys will put together that will outline all of the elements in the community via your governing documents and make a column for maintenance, column for insurance, and then there's also, and it'll show whether it's the association's responsibility A or the homeowner's or the owner's responsibility O. So that's one document that you can look at when determining who's going to be responsible for that. It should be attached with your governing documents. If you don't have one, highly recommend that you take the time and spend the money with your attorneys to get one made. With my communities that I've managed over the past few years, it's about 50-50. About half have them, half don't. I use these all the time. If you don't use them, then it's kind of a crapshoot going through the governing documents to see if you can determine what it is, but it's an easy one-stop shop for a lot of those elements. You know, things like windows are always a question. The trim is always a question. Doors is always a question. So this is kind of an easy reference point for homeowners, for us, for anybody that's involved in that.
Is there a title, specific title
It's
used in this document?
Maintenance and insurance chart is usually what it goes by. It might, depending on your attorneys, be named differently. This particular document came from a community, so I just wanted to show a snapshot of it. Depending on how much the homes or the HOA is responsible for, I've got single-family homes that, it's one page because the homeowners are responsible for most everything. High-rises, you might have 5 pages listing all of your elements and showing who's responsible for what. So it's going to vary. A lot of times, just think about it, it's pretty commonly studs out. So if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, my garbage disposal isn't working, it's clogged up, yeah, probably not. If it's a pipe coming, if your toilet's backing up, it might be a common element. It might be outside of the walls of your unit, which is accessed by several units on your floor or in your stack. So that's a little bit different. If your refrigerator is on the fritz, no. We get a lot, believe it or not, for appliances. People's first gut is to call us, but we're not repair people for those kinds of things. I just mentioned toilets and sinks. I don't know how many calls do we get about
Lots.
that? Yeah. So it is, like I said, that's a little more gray, but if your toilet isn't flushing, likely not the HOA's fault, that's on you. We do get a lot of pushback from homeowners when we're like, oh, yep, not our responsibility. The HOA is not going to pay for that. We're happy to refer you. A lot of times we get work orders in because our first instinct is to send it to the HOA. Those are ones that Gwen will close immediately, knowing that that's not our responsibility. And we can comment in there and say, yep, sorry, this is an HOA responsibility. If you need recommendations on a purveyor, let us know, whatever. We can do that. Gwen brought this up to me, and it was a good kind of light bulb moment when I'm thinking about this, but it's like, are you the only one that uses it? So if you're the only one that's using that particular appliance, that particular door, that particular unit, chances are that that's going to be your responsibility. And then also you can review your governing documents. Homeowners aren't going to sit down and go through 56 pages of bylaws, rules and regs, but there is that potential. We're just asking, I guess, in the long run, is really sit down, have your homeowners think about it, let's impress upon them. I have a board or an annual meeting tomorrow night, and we're going to go through this as a community so that you've got that, and they've got the understanding too. But there is need to be a little thought behind when you're doing this.
And I try to educate the homeowners that are putting in work orders that are not the HOA's responsibility. A common element is anything that the property owns, with the exception of the unit. A limited common element is also assigned to that unit for usage, but it is shared between everyone, like their decks, like the elevators, like the club room. And I tell homeowners, if you're not sure, because like Wendy said, trying to go through the governing documents, I think a lot of homeowners might interpret it different than you or I, or anyone for that matter. It can be confusing and it'd be hard to find the information you're looking for. I don't have a problem, and as long as I have the time, I'll search the governing documents for the homeowner. But if I get a work order for something specific that we are pretty positive it's the homeowner's responsibility, I try to let them know where in the governing documents they can find it, or again, just remind them what the common areas are, limited common elements, and then things that they are solely responsible for. Okay.
So emergency. This is a huge one. Gosh, we look at the fires in California, and we know that's wiping out millions of dollars of properties and lots of homes. Just makes me shudder to think about what some of those communities and community managers are going through. But you mentioned this earlier. If there's an emergency, and to us, emergency, think fire, flood, or blood. Those are the three things that you're going to want to think about. The first thing you're going to want to do, if there's fire, flood, or blood, or something that needs, call 911. CAP should not be your first call. You shouldn't be sitting down to complete a work order. But if there is an emergency that's that is catastrophic, you're going to want to call them first. Fire, flood, or blood. Is there a threat to life, health, or property? So that kind of goes along with the fire, flood, or blood. If your neighbor's dog is barking, I'm using this a lot because we get these calls all the time. We don't expect a call from you at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon because that dog's barking. Those are things that need to be handled homeowner to homeowner. Natural disasters. If we have a bad hailstorm and you fear there's been a lot of damage to the building, that's certainly one. I grew up in the Midwest. Tornadoes were an issue. We don't have them so much here, but you never know. If there's a horrible blizzard and for some reason it's, affecting the operations of the building or the structure itself, of course, we want to know about that. Also check your governing documents. There should be some sort of emergency provision in those as well that will help you outline. And one thing that CAP's been talking about lately is, do you have an emergency plan in place for your community? Whether you're single family homes, whether you're high-rise, mid-rise, let's make sure you have that emergency plan. I'm going through the whole entire process right now with the building that I am the general manager at. They've been around for 20 years and have not had anything in place. So we're really working through that. That includes getting fire captains in your building. That includes having a fire safety protection professional. In this instance, my assistant general manager went through and got the certification. We're currently working on getting fire captains for each building. You know, if you're a single-family home, it might be a one-pager that says, hey, if there's a fire or a natural disaster, or we have to evacuate the community, get in your car and leave. I mean, it could be that easy. But I sincerely hope that you have some sort of emergency plan in place, and if you don't, start working on that immediately. I've been working with a excellent consulting group. Once I started getting into this, I've got in way too far. There's a lot more information that I didn't want to miss, and I wanted to make sure that was comprehensive. So I can certainly share that resource with you or your community manager to get these going.
When the emergency pager is used, it's for after hours, so after 4 o'clock and before 8 o'clock in the morning. If you have an emergency during business hours, please call the office. You're going to get a much faster response. The homeowner or whoever's making the call to the emergency pager has to leave a voicemail. Don't let it ring, wait for someone to pick up and keep calling back till we pick it up, because we won't do that. We want a verbal message. And again, that's our paper trail. That's our record that this homeowner is making that request. We are required to call back that homeowner within 30 minutes. I will tell you this, I had the pager for a long time. Aaron and I shared it for about 2 years, just him and I. No one else was picking it up. And by the way, it's a volunteer position at CAP.
I did it one weekend and never again.
Yeah, it's challenging. The majority of calls we get, and I feel pretty safe in saying that at least 90% of the emergency pages that we get are for leaks. When I have an emergency page for a leak, there's a lot of information the homeowner's not thinking to give me. When did it start? How much water is it? Is it coming from a roof? Is it coming from somebody upstairs? Have you gone upstairs to talk to that person? Maybe they just have a bathtub overflow. If a renter calls, I will still help them, but I also need them to call the owner. Possible the owner's responsible for this, and to do anything, we're going to need their permission to move forward. So just keep in mind, if you're calling the emergency pager or you have homeowners that call the emergency pager, again, we can't stress how important it is to make sure those are serious emergencies. I'm not comfortable sending a plumber out at $500 an hour if you have a homeowner that just has a drip that could possibly wait till tomorrow. So if it's a flood, we're going to be there. If it's a couple of drips, we're going to say, please wait until tomorrow when we get somebody out there that doesn't cost a couple $1,000s for after-hour services.
We want to make sure that's clear, because as board members, you don't want us sending out people on weekends knowing that you're paying them time and a half, maybe holiday pay. So that's something we really have to consider. We don't just automatically send people out. A lot of times the pagers will call or get a hold of the community manager, be like, hey, the elevator's down in this building, is it okay to send somebody out after hours? And it's like, if it's at 6 o'clock on a Sunday night and Monday morning's 12 hours away, we're likely going to wait until that happens. So that's something, another conversation you want to have with your community manager. Maybe set those boundaries. Okay, here's what I want you to do in case of an emergency. Here's how we should proceed. And a lot of times these things happen, they might have, I don't answer the phone after I go to bed, but I don't usually hear it. But, it might be 2 in the morning and somebody's calling about a leak that could wait till the next morning. You don't want us trying to get a hold of you at 2 a.m. to ask if that's okay. So the question of can it wait till the next morning or can it wait till Monday is a huge one that we ask ourselves on a regular basis. All right, so how to make a request. You got this, you found something that's wrong, you need to go in and make sure that you get this request out. So how is the best way to do it? So I highly recommend, like we've already talked about, doing it through Sync Web Access. I was going to show you, but we're running a little short on time. So if you guys don't know how to do a work order or able to walk your homeowners through, let myself or Gwen know. We're happy to show that to you. Everybody that has access to Sync Web Access, right from their dashboard, on the right-hand side, there's a little square that says submit a work order or submit maintenance request, one of the two, and you just click on that. Yeah. That's going to be the most efficient. If I'm running around a building and managing a flood, she's going to see it before I get back to my desk and get settled. So make sure that you do that. If you want to send an email back up or, hey, I tried to call Wendy, but she's not answering, here's my work order, we'll connect after the fact. But this is going to be the first source to see that. Obviously, you can request it of your community manager, Heartbeat Division. Co-managed properties, and those of you that have staff on site, 24 hours is a little different. I have some properties that have staff. Most everybody goes and asks them about it or tells them. If you're co-managed, you're going to need to absolutely have community management approval or board approval before we send anybody out. But yeah, I can't emphasize sync enough on
And when
that.
you do go to make a request, the reason it's really important for the homeowners for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's our paper trail, which I mentioned. Number two, Sync Web Access auto-populates the homeowner's email to every single correspondence that work order has. Unless I literally delete it off, the homeowner's gonna know when it got sent to the vendor, maybe when it got sent to the board for a bid approval, maybe when it's getting scheduled. So it's so important for the homeowner to be responsible and open that work order again, because there's so much information on there that's accessible to them. So it's pretty easy. When you go to open up a work order, it's gonna auto-populate all of the names you have on your account. If you have a renter and you don't see their name listed on your account, please call me, very important. We wanna know who's in that unit if you're not, in case of an emergency. But also, if I need to get in touch with one of your renters because it's possible their bathtub is overflowing, the person downstairs is getting flooded, if I don't pull up your account and see that you have a renter, you're gonna get that call. To make things easier and more efficient and safer for everybody, if you have renters, put them on your account. It'll auto-populate on the work order, so whoever has that work order sees your rental manager, you, your renter. All the contact information is right there on the work order. Very efficient.
Okay, so we have someone who has a renter. What does the owner, how does the owner do that with the renter?
Absolutely, the owner can call me. I typically like it in writing, but we add onto the account the renter's first and last name, their email address, because it will also put them into a directory that sends them e-blasts that are non-HOA related information. For example, there's a water shut off in your building, or there's a fire inspection, and we want everybody to be aware that lights will be flashing, alarms will be going off. So their phone number, their email, first and last name. If you have a rental manager, also let me know. I like to have your permission in writing to give them any information on your account. And again, their name, their phone number, their email address. And typically, just so you know, if renters call, we don't work for renters. We work for the homeowners and for the board directors. Typically, if a renter calls with a work order, I have them reach out to the owner and have the owner facilitate that work order.
We'll zip through this pretty quickly. To help expedite your work order, the best thing is to make sure that it's complete and has all the information that we need. So what to include? Make sure you include your information. If you're completing it, even on behalf of a common area, maybe one of the machines is down in your gym and you need to have it. We still need to be able to get in touch with you if we have any questions. Detailed description. My favorite are there's a leak in the ceiling. Okay, where? What's it coming from? How bad is it dripping? So make sure it's detailed for us, because we're not there. We can't see it. If you want us to wait to get over there and have somebody take a look at it, fine, but we'd rather be proactive and start before. What is your desired action? Are you just telling us this so we're aware? Is the garage floor dirty because we had a bad snowstorm? Okay, great. Thanks for the information. We've got it on the list. If it's looking to be repaired, then we'll need to know that, or what your anticipation is. Because when we see these work orders, if that's not communicated, we might have a totally different view of what needs to be done. Specific location, huge. Don't just put there's a leak in the ceiling. You need to tell us where, what floor, on the second floor, just above the fire, the fire extinguisher, something like that, so we know where to find it. There's nothing worse than you go to look at something and you can't find what the work order was for. How long it's been an issue. Whether you just noticed it, hey, you know what, it's been dripping in the garage for a couple of days, it hasn't stopped, that information. And Gwen's very favorite, she does this to us too, drives me crazy. Well, I need a picture, Wendy. Well, I'm not there, I don't have a picture. If you have this, if you need to complete a work order for something that's not completely oblivious and obvious, then let's make sure that you're including photos. You can attach them to the work orders very easily, evidence, because that will be one of their first questions.
It helps locate the problem. It tells us We have a before picture, so the vendor, they provide an after picture, we can see a before and after. So yeah, we're huge on photographs, they're super important.
Should move-in, move-outs get reported via a work order so that if elevator key it adds up?
That's going to be up to you and your community manager. Me personally, I don't like those going through work orders. So that's an email, something that I schedule on my calendar. I will admit the first slide up on Erin's first presentation about the calendar, I cringed a little bit because that's one of the things that I have a really hard time keeping up with. But I do try and put that on the community calendar. It's still something everybody can see. But as far as work orders, Gwen's going to end up closing it because it's not necessarily a maintenance request. But check with your community manager. We all kind of handle move-ins and outs a little differently.
Part of that's going to be dependent on the information that the association has conveyed to us. So in some instances, it will be something that goes through service because Gwen will be able to take care of it. It may not need anybody's involvement. It may just be that, we notify the community and that's it. Others, you may have to get a key and you will have to involve the community manager. So it'll be dependent on the property.
Yeah. All right, so you've figured out you want to submit a work order, that your work warrants it. You've submitted that work order. So now you send it off into La La Land and you have no idea what happens after that. Generally, your community manager is going to get a tag and it's going to say a work order has been requested of whatever property, and then it's going to go to Heartbeat. So I'm going to let Gwen quickly, since we're running behind, once the work order's been submitted, go through what happens and what the process is.
So when the work orders come in, I get notifications every single work order that comes in and when it comes in. If it is an emergency or a priority, I'll address it right that second. I get all the work orders dispatched by the end of the day. A lot of times I have to reach back out to the homeowner for more information, but all the work orders have a status. And if you're a homeowner who opened a work order, you're going to get a notification every time that status changes. Once we get the work order and we've determined that it's the HOA's responsibility, we have some HOAs that want the board to approve work orders before they're dispatched. That'll happen. If I need more information from the homeowner, that happens. Once it gets dispatched out to the vendor, and usually that's the vendor that your HOA has determined wants, you want them to be on your property. Ideally, I would love to have the same vendors at your community for everything, like the same electrician, the same plumber, the same roofer. But again, that all depends on a lot of other circumstances. But if you have a favorite vendor, let me know who they are so we can make sure they're set up and have insurance. Once the work order gets dispatched out, depending on what it is, the time frame in which it happens varies anywhere from a couple of days to literally a couple of weeks. If you have a work order that's going to require a bid, the vendor has to go out there, do an inspection. You might have multiple vendors out there doing inspections for one work order. Once we get the bid, it gets attached to the work order. You guys get that and make your choice. Again, all of this gets documented on the work order along with all these attachments, invoices, photographs, bids. Once the work order, let's say, for example, that it's going to take a little bit of time. If I have updated information, I like to email homeowners. Sometimes it works out great. Other times the homeowner might not hear from me, in a timely manner. Understood. So that's why the notes and everything that's on that work order is so important, because I might not be available, but Wendy can look it up and say, yep, I see here the last note, the vendor's coming Tuesday. Anyway, once we've determined that the work is done, I try to get confirmation for the work order is complete. I will reach out to the vendor, I'll reach out to the homeowner, I'll reach out to the community manager. Nobody replies to me, I'm going to go ahead and consider it completed and close it. If it's not, please tell me. I'm happy to reopen it and refacilitate whatever we need to do. I also try to reach out to the homeowner on several occasions about, is this getting done on time, or, the plumber needs more information. And again, all those are going to be in the notes. So once it gets completed and closed out, it still stays on the homeowner's sync web access. So they have a record, but that work order will show closed. Or completed, whatever the situation is. It's also a record for the board to go back, and you should be looking at these monthly, what's happening at your community. I have one community that they have a lot of plumbing issues, and the board has to pay attention because It could be any other building with the same issue happening. So as long as they're aware of it, they know how to handle it now. They're like, okay, well, we've had to go through this a few times. We were expecting this. We know exactly what has to be done. So it kind of also helps us get the process more streamlined. And then the rest of it is just data and storage. And again, the vendors, if we have an invoice, it gets attached to the work order. The work order number should be attached to the invoice, and then you guys get it, and hopefully you approve it for all the work and service that our vendors do.
Well, I think it's also important to note that once Gwen dispatches or assigns a vendor to that work order gets emailed to the vendor. So they have the same information that you've put into your work order. So if you have photos, a lot of times it's not just Gwen wanting the photos, it's the vendors calling Gwen and saying, I need a picture so we know what to expect or what we need to be prepared for. So all of that information that's on the work order also goes to the vendor that's been assigned. And these things aren't always immediate. I mean, things like batteries and smoke alarms or, you know, things that are a smaller end, we're gonna happen a lot faster than a big, you know, hole in your garage that might have, you know, resulted from a leak. So it's super important to understand what the process is. You know, for me, most of my properties, I have $1,000 that I can spend without board approval. Well, the majority of these larger projects cost more than $1,000 these days. So there is a little bit of a process in there. And that's also communicating to your homeowners like, hey, look, we know about this hole in the garage ceiling. We're working on it. We're getting bids. It's just not that simple process that's going to happen in a week. Our vendors are scheduling further and further out. It's so frustrating trying to get somebody scheduled too. So that's kind of up against us. But just make sure they're complete so that everybody has the information you need.
Questions?
That's it. Yep.
Who does the access, who does the analysis of the maintenance history for your equipment in the building?
That should be the board combined with your community manager. So, you know, I've got a new building that I don't have a lot of history on, so I'm putting in work orders for that, even if it's something that's like, hey, Wendy, the heat's down again. I might be at home or not by a computer. I'll put that work order in so that we have that running. So we can talk to our HVAC technician and be like, hey, man, this is broken down 3 times in the last month. I can see from this, and this date from the work orders.
Do board members have access to that data?
Yeah, they can access, they can look at work orders. You talked about work order reports easy. Those are very easily pulled. I do have with a couple of my properties, whether it's at their monthly board meetings or just on a weekly, when we do our weekly updates on Fridays. I have a couple of communities that want to see all the open work orders, so I'll run a work order report and attach it to that. And then at board meetings, we can run the full report. Maybe it's just for that month to show everything that might still be open. Statuses are pending, what's been closed, what's been completed, what Gwen closed because it wasn't HOA. We can't delete them, so they'll all show up on that report.
This is just a comment, but Gwen is also really great at, like sometimes in high-rise, like for condo buildings, there's a discrepancy between a homeowner responsibility or the HOA, and if Gwen dispatches a vendor out there, they're like, actually, it's the K-trap of this particular unit, she will let the homeowner know before any work is done that it is their responsibility to pay this bill, so that the HOA doesn't end up footing the bill for it, right? Sometimes the HOA will pay for it, then we charge back the homeowner, but Gwen is really, really conscious of it to make sure that she is, that the work orders are actually supposed to be paid by the HOA. So know that you have a great advocate in you and Gwen and the heartbeat team. So I just want to give you that prop.
Well, he made a good point about stuff that we find out later. I know with one of my properties in particular, there's been a lot of issues with leaks that are homeowner related. If Gwen or whoever has the emergency pager calls somebody out over a weekend or in the evenings, and it's affiliated with a work order, it is the HOA's responsibility to pay that bill first, and then we get the money back from the homeowner. It doesn't go directly to the homeowner. So if CAP was involved, it's the HOA that's gonna have to pay for it. So when you're looking at, and this happens quite frequently, I'm trying to figure out a way not to, but we're also trying to make sure that everybody's taken care of. Sometimes it's like, oh crap, let's get it fixed and we'll deal with the payment after the fact. But as board members, you need to understand that when those bills come through and they're charged back to homeowners, the HOA has to pay them first. And we can certainly add those to their sync. We send them the invoice and say, hey, this was determined by the board. It's not an HOA issue. You're responsible for the payment. It'll pay back, they pay back the board kind of through, I don't know, electronic transfer.
Yeah,
Like,
and-
they pay it when they pay their monthly assessment fees back to you. Well, we hope they do, but,
And usually if it's plumbing, it's usually always plumbing when this happens. You send a plumber out and they don't know where the leak is coming from. Once they determine it, then we would move on to the build back
yeah,
stage.
it happens a lot with water. And, oh, my back sink is backing up, and determining where the backup is, whether it's in a common element pipe or if it's something that's inside the four walls that's to that unit, whether they're flushing wads of paper towels down the toilet or whatever people do, so.
We're gonna pause questions, we are quite behind, we have one last that I have online, which is, we had a recent work order with a requested preferred vendor, but the preferred vendor was not used. How do we make sure only the preferred vendor is used? We have in our processes a association vendor page, which has all of the types of possible, vendor requests or requests of vendors, whether it's HVAC, roofing, plumbing, whatever it may be, and a list of who is preferred for that association. It's done for every association we have. So if you have a question that something like this wasn't done, get with your community manager. Make sure that you have the right information on the association vendor page, so that as a go-to, they'll have the Heartbeat team will have that at their disposal.
Yeah.
All right.
Some of our vendors will not work on personal homeowner stuff. For example, if you're calling saying, I need an HVAC guy, because most of our vendors are commercial, some will do residential, some will not. So they don't all work directly with homeowners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're gonna take 1 second. Thank you so much.